What's up, bass players? Josh Fossgreen here. Today we're going to explore a really exciting and fun right-hand technique for the bass guitar where we're doing a little bit of percussion in the midst of our plucking. This is a really great technique to have in your bag just in general, especially when you're in drummerless situations. Maybe you have a friend who plays guitar or bass and you guys are doing a little duet. You can throw a little bit of that drum feeling into the music by using some percussive technique with the right hand. So that's what we're going to get into today. To follow along with the music, you'll want to download the PDF, follow my magic floating fingers, and you can download that for free, absolutely no anything required. And as usual, you've got sheet music and tablature you can follow along with there. So what is this technique I'm talking about? It doesn't exactly have a name. I'm just calling it right hand percussion here, which is sort of a vague term. What we're going to look at today is a specific way of smacking the strings. If you just think of the bass as a percussive instrument, basically the thing you would do to get a percussive sound is just to kind of drum on it in some way or another. You could use your thumb. You know, it doesn't really have to be in an educated way, just to get percussive noises where you're not having notes ringing for a long time. That's what percussion is just short, chaotic vibrations. So what we're doing with percussion on the bass is keeping stuff short and ideally getting a couple different frequencies in there so it sounds like sort of a mush like a cymbal or a drum hit would. So what we're going to do to work that into our plucking is use a specific way of doing that where you can kind of stay in position for normal plucking technique. But you can start playing with throwing some percussion in there. And specifically, we're going to look at putting some hits on the backbeat, which is beats 2 and 4 in pop, funk, soul, just that whole world where the drums go kick, snare, kick, snare. Those snares are on 2 and 4, and that's generally what you want to emulate to get the feeling of having drums in the midst. And as you noticed in the intro, I did have drums playing along, but we're going to play around a little bit with not having the drums so you can see how this functions in the absence of a drummer. So here's what this technique looks like. Basically, you're in position, you're doing your normal alternating plucking. What we're going to do, you've got your thumb anchored on the pickup or maybe on the E string if you're not using it. In this case, we're anchored on the pickup. I like to be anchored on the neck pickup in general. I do move over here sometimes, but I'm usually sitting on the neck pickup. And you know, depends on your bass pickup placement and everything. But you want your thumb anchored somewhere. So this first exercise, we're going to do a very simplified version of the bass line I played in the intro. We're just going to pluck a C, and then what I'm doing is I'm using pretty much all 4 of my fingers, mostly the 3 longer ones, but a little bit of pinky. And that might be different for you depending on your relative pinky to other fingers' length. Some people have longer, shorter pinkies. But what I'm doing is I'm just smacking the strings. I've got a couple fingers smacking the A string and a couple fingers smacking the E string all at once. And the reason I'm aiming for multiple strings, again, is to just kind of thicken up the percussive sound. And also I'm aiming for the E and A strings because the strings are thicker and lower. So if I try to do the pats up here on the D and G strings, it just doesn't get quite enough body to work in a lot of contexts. You can do it, but here we're going to shoot for the E and A strings to get a nice solid thwack. So exercise 1, we're just going to go pluck the note normally, thwack it with our 4 fingers, again keeping the thumb anchored. Next note. So basically we're recreating that kick snare. The notes are on the kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, and you're marking where the snare drum would be with your right hand. And same thing when we get into the more complex version. Let's try that together just with a metronome so you can hear your bass really well without drums or keyboard in the way. Here we go together. 1, 2, exercise 1. So just play around at that level of complexity. Just get used to switching from note to smack to note to smack. And part of the reason we're smacking this way, we're kind of using our fingertips, as you've been seeing, is rather than doing a whole, just coming out and doing a really simple smack, this way we actually stay in position so I can actually set myself up. Whether I want to pluck with my first finger or my second finger on the next note, doesn't matter. I can kind of set it up so that after the smack I'm in position, which is how you want to do this if you want to integrate it into a plucked bass line. If you're just doing some smacks and you're not playing any notes, then it doesn't really matter how you do the technique. But this works specifically really well for plucked bass lines. And you can also play with hand placement along the string and see what the sound difference is between just smacking the E versus just smacking the A versus smacking them together. And it's going to vary a lot depending on, if you're doing this when you're not plugged in, you're just going to hear a kind of high frequency of that smack sound. But if you're plugged into a decent amp, you're going to hear more of a low end thump when you do that, especially if you're playing out of a bigger amplifier with a little bit of volume on it. You start to hear a lot more body in those smacks. Like if you're coming out of a big sound system, you can really hear, wow, holy crap, that almost works as a snare drum. So the real trick with this technique, which is what we're about to get into, is just fitting those backbeat smacks into bass grooves that have more going on. Because eventually, you get pretty comfortable just going note, smack, note, smack, note, smack, note. And this is great, if you're in a little folk or country outfit and you don't have a drummer, you can augment the percussion from the acoustic guitar strum or whatever with a little bit of action on the bass, assuming it's appropriate. But this kind of thing would be common on upright bass too in that context, specifically boom, 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 doing that upright slap kind of technique that I am very mediocre at. So in exercise 2, we're looking at a more complex bass line, still fitting those smacks in on 2 and 4, and I've specifically not put any notes on 2 and 4 so that it's easy to just fit a smack right in there. But you can do this smack technique slightly adapted so that you are playing a note at the same time and getting that smack, but that's top secret. Not really, but we're not going to worry about that today. Right now we're just going to worry about the basic technique, which is notes and smacks are happening at separate times for simplicity. So let's just try exercise 2 together and see how it goes. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is something you can play with in a lot of different contexts. There's a lot of bass lines you could fit this into. My Girl. It helps, especially, again, if you're without a drummer, it helps the average listener get their booty shaken and get their groove on, etc. Without the drums to cue them, because you're kind of playing, and everybody knows what a backbeat feels like and how to shake their booty to it. So if you can get them feeling that even without the drummer there, then people tend to be able to, even listen to solo bass music who aren't necessarily music freaks or musicians or anything. But as long as it helps people feel the pulse in the music, even if they're not a particularly educated listener. And you can hear a lot of bass players doing this. I think I mostly picked this up from Victor Wooten. You can hear him doing it a lot with his finger style and with the slap technique. There's variations on the theme there too, but this is a specific finger style thing. So anyway, I could go on all day. It's so fun. It just also, for me, it just makes it more fun to play by myself. If I want to play something groovy, I don't want to put on a drum track, I can try to simulate with my technique. And that's always been something that's interesting to me, rather than using a ton of backing tracks or effects pedals or what have you. I like to try to get as much as I can from my hands Not that that stuff's bad, and there are people who do it much better than I can. I just personally have always been drawn to trying to get sounds out of my hands without fiddling with a whole lot of knobs and gadgets. So this is one way I've done that. One last thing I'll throw at you that's really cool is that, again, this works better without a drummer, but because you're simulating that drum sound, you can kind of double or halve the time of any given groove. Just play it and you'll know what I'm talking about. So we've been playing boom, 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 like a slow halftime groove. Well, I could just as easily double that. Now we're back to halftime. Now we'll double it again. So that's another fun little trick you can do. That's it. That's the technique. I hope that you guys will play with this, fit it into your own playing. I think it's a really big contribution to the bass technique repertoire. And it's something I do even when there is a drummer around sometimes, just out of habit. And it certainly doesn't sound bad with drums. So have fun, play around. Please subscribe, share these videos with your friends. I really appreciate that. And check out the back catalog of videos. There's over 100 of them. They're all free, sitting here on YouTube, waiting for you to uncover their secrets in an exciting Dan Brown novel called The Backlog of Josh Fossgreen Bass Lesson Videos and Demons. I'm working on a new Scales and Arpeggios book for beginning to intermediate, possibly even to advanced bass players. It'll come out sometime this year. I'm really stoked about it. In the meantime, Beastly Scales and Arpeggios is still available for you intrepid shredders out there. And I've got a few slots open for private students right now. If you live on Earth, you can Skype with me one-on-one and we can work on your bass playing together. You can get all the information you need for that on my website, joshfossgreen.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.